The year is 1871. The Arizona Territory bleeds under the scorching sun and the violence between Apache warriors and American settlers. Sarah McKenzie, a 28-year-old widow, lives with her 6-year-old daughter Emma in an isolated homestead near the Dragoon Mountains, when a band of Apache warriors, led by the fierce but honorable warrior Naiche, surrounds their home seeking revenge for a recent massacre of their people. Sarah makes a desperate plea that will change everything. Her words, "Take my life, but spare my child," set in motion a series of events that will challenge everything both sides believe about mercy, motherhood, and humanity in the midst of brutal conflict. The rifle felt heavier than usual in Sarah McKenzie's calloused hands as she peered through the crack in the shuttered window. Outside, the Arizona desert stretched endlessly, painted in hues of burnt orange and dusty brown under the merciless afternoon sun. But it wasn't the landscape that made her heart pound against her ribs. It was what she couldn't see that terrified her most. "Mama," Emma's small voice drifted from beneath the kitchen table where Sarah had hidden her minutes ago. "Can I come out now?" "Not yet, sweet pea," Sarah whispered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Remember what we practiced. Stay quiet as a church mouse." The silence outside was wrong. Even the cicadas had stopped their incessant buzzing. The horses in the barn had gone quiet too, and that meant only one thing: someone was out there. Someone who moved with the kind of skill that made animals hold their breath. Sarah had been alone with Emma for 8 months now. Ever since cholera took James, 8 months of learning to shoot straight, read the desert's moods, to distinguish between the howl of a coyote and something far more dangerous. The other homesteaders had warned her to leave, to head back east where a widow might find work in a factory or as a seamstress. But this land, this stubborn patch of dirt and dreams, was all she had left of James. It was Emma's inheritance, her future. A shadow flickered past the window so quick she almost thought she'd imagined it. Then another, and another. Sarah's mouth went dry. She knew that way of moving, that deliberate silence. Apache. Her mind raced through the recent news from Fort Buchanan. 3 days ago, a group of soldiers and civilian volunteers had attacked an Apache camp 20 miles north. The details were murky, but the whispers at the trading post had been clear enough. Women and children had died. The Apache would want blood for blood. That was their way. "Emma," Sarah said, forcing her voice to remain calm, "I need you to get into the root cellar. Remember where Papa showed you?" "But Mama." "Now Emma, take your doll and the canteen I left there. No matter what you hear, you don't come out until I tell you, or until tomorrow's sun." If she stopped herself. "Just stay hidden, baby." She heard Emma's bare feet padding across the floor, heard the cellar door's quiet creak. Good girl, smart girl. Sarah had practiced this with her a dozen times, making it seem like a game. Hide and seek, she'd called it. Though the seeking part was what she prayed would never come. Sarah checked the rifle again. 5 shots loaded, another dozen bullets in her apron pocket. Not enough. Not nearly enough. If they wanted in. She knew the stories, how Apache warriors could put an arrow through a man's eye at 50 yards, how they could move across the desert floor like smoke. The front door, thick oak, that James had hauled from Tucson, suddenly seemed thin as paper. Then she heard it, a voice, deep and measured, speaking in accented English. "White woman, we know you are there. We know you are alone." Sarah's hands steadied on the rifle. Something in that voice, not cruel, not savage, as the newspapers always described them, just certain, inevitable as the sunset. "I'm armed," she called back, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "I don't want trouble. This is my land. Leave us be." A different voice responded, younger, angrier, speaking in Apache. Then the first voice again, still in English. "Your people took from us 3 sons ago. Children dead, women dead. Blood calls for blood." Sarah closed her eyes. She'd feared this, known it might come to this. The cycle of vengeance that rolled across the territory like a dust storm, consuming everything in its path. I had no part in that, she said. I'm just a widow trying to raise my daughter. We've harmed no one. Silence stretched between them. Sarah could feel them out there, probably surrounding the house by now. How many? 5, 10, more? It didn't matter. Even one Apache warrior was more than she could handle if he truly wanted in. The shutters on the east window suddenly splintered, an arrow shaft protruding through the wood. Sarah spun, rifle raised, but held her fire. They were testing her, seeing if she'd waste her bullets on shadows. Your soldiers killed Standing Dove's daughter, the first voice said. She was 6 winters, same as the child you hide. Sarah's blood turned to ice. They knew about Emma, of course they did. These men could track a beetle across bare rock. Finding signs of a child in this homestead would be simple work for them. She's innocent, Sarah said, her voice cracking now. She's just a baby. She doesn't even understand what. Neither did Standing Dove's daughter. The truth of it hit her like a physical blow. Somewhere, an Apache mother was grieving, just as Sarah would grieve if... No, she couldn't think like that. She had to be strong, had to find a way through this. What do you want? She asked. Justice. Killing us won't bring back your dead. Neither will letting you live. Sarah heard movement at the back of the house now. They were surrounding her completely. The barn door creaked. They were checking for livestock, probably. They'd find the 2 horses, the milk cow, the chickens, take what they wanted. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe. The front door shook as something heavy struck it. Then again, they were coming in. Sarah made a decision that came from somewhere deeper than thought, deeper than fear. It came from the same place that had given her the strength to hold James as he died, to bury him herself when no one would help, to wake every morning since and face another day. She set down the rifle. Walking to the door, she pulled back the heavy wooden bar that secured it. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. She was beyond fear now, in some strange, clear place where only one thing mattered. The door swung open. 5 Apache warriors stood before her, painted for war, weapons drawn. The one in front was older than she'd expected, perhaps 40 winters, with intelligent eyes that studied her with the intensity of a hawk. This would be the one who'd spoken, their leader. Behind him, others watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely contained rage. One younger warrior, his face twisted with grief, had an arrow nocked and aimed at her heart. Sarah stepped out onto the porch, into the blazing sun, and slowly sank to her knees. My name is Sarah McKenzie, she said, looking directly at the leader. I'm 28 years old. My husband died 8 months ago. I have one child, a daughter named Emma. She's 6 years old. She likes to sing to the chickens and believes that clouds are where angels live. She's all I have in this world. The leader's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. I know you've lost children. I know your people have suffered. I can't change what happened. I can't bring back your dead. But I'm begging you, mother to fathers, woman to warriors, don't make my daughter pay for crimes she didn't commit. The younger warrior with the arrow spoke, harshly in Apache, clearly arguing for something. The leader silenced him with a gesture. Where is the child? The leader asked. Sarah's throat constricted. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. She could lie, pretend Emma had gone to town with neighbors. But looking into those dark, knowing eyes, she understood that lies would only make things worse. She's hidden, Sarah said simply. She's afraid. Bring her out. No. The single word hung in the air like a challenge. The warriors tensed. Sarah saw hands tighten on weapons. You would die for this? The leader asked. Sarah raised her chin, meeting his gaze directly. Yes, even knowing she will die anyway after you are gone. And here it was, the moment of absolute truth. Sarah felt tears gathering in her eyes, not from fear but from the terrible weight of what she was about to say. She rose to her feet, standing straight and tall despite being surrounded by armed warriors who could end her life in a heart. "Then I ask you this," she said, her voice carrying across the desert silence. "Take my life, but spare my child. Let my death be payment for whatever justice you seek, but let her live. Send her to Fort Buchanan, to the missionary school. Anywhere, just let her live. She has done nothing wrong except be born with white skin in a land torn apart by hatred." The words seemed to echo in the still air. Even the wind had stopped, as if the desert itself held its breath. The younger warrior lowered his bow slightly, confusion replacing rage on his face. Others exchanged glances, but the leader, Naiche, she would later learn his name was, stood perfectly still, studying her with those penetrating eyes. "You would trade your life for hers?" he asked, without fighting, without trying to run, without hesitation. Sarah replied, "That's what mothers do. We die for our children. Your mothers would do the same, have done the same." Something rippled across Naiche's face, an emotion so quick she almost missed it. Pain, recognition, understanding. He spoke in Apache to his men. The younger warrior argued back, gesturing angrily at the house. Another warrior, older and calmer, said something that seemed to give everyone pause. The discussion continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Sarah standing there in the sun, waiting for her fate to be decided. Finally, Naiche raised his hand for silence. "Bring out the child," he said. Sarah's legs nearly buckled. "You said," I said, "bring her out. I will not tell you again." There was something different in his tone now. Not softer exactly, but changed somehow. Sarah found herself walking back into the house on unsteady legs, her mind racing. What would they do? Would they make Emma watch while they... No, she couldn't think like that. Whatever happened, she had to be strong for Emma. She opened the root cellar door. "Emma, sweet pea, you need to come out now." "Is the game over, Mama?" "Yes, baby, the game is over." Emma climbed out, dusty and clutching her corn-husk doll. She saw the tears on Sarah's face and immediately wrapped her small arms around her mother's legs. "Don't cry, Mama. Did we win?" Sarah lifted her daughter, holding her tight, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "I don't know yet, baby, but you were very brave. Very brave." She carried Emma out onto the porch. The Apache warriors stood like statues, but she saw something shift in their expressions when they saw the child. Emma, for her part, studied them with the fearless curiosity that only young children possess. "Why are they painted like that, Mama?" she whispered. Before Sarah could answer, Naiche stepped forward. Emma pressed closer to her mother, but didn't look away. The Apache leader reached into a pouch at his side and pulled something out. His closed fist extended toward Emma. After a moment's hesitation and a nod from Sarah, Emma held out her small hand. Into it, Naiche dropped a small carved wooden horse, no bigger than a walnut. Emma's eyes widened. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Did you make it?" For the first time, Naiche's stern expression cracked. The ghost of something that might have been a smile touched his lips. "My daughter," he said quietly. "She made it. She's a good carver," Emma said solemnly. "Can I meet her? Maybe she could teach me." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah felt the weight of it, understanding flooding through her. His daughter was dead. One of the children killed in the raid. "Emma," Sarah whispered. "His daughter, she's gone to heaven, baby." Emma's face fell. "Oh." She looked at the wooden horse, then back at Naiche. "Then you should keep it. To remember her." She held out the tiny horse, offering it back. Naiche stared at the small wooden horse in the child's outstretched hand, for what felt like an eternity. The other warriors shifted restlessly behind him, uncertain. This was not how raids were supposed to go. There should be fighting, or fleeing, or pleading, but not this. Not a white child offering back the last token of his murdered daughter with innocent sympathy in her blue eyes. Keep it, he said finally, his voice rough. He gently closed Emma's fingers around the carved horse. A gift given cannot be taken back. The younger warrior, Standing Dove, whose own daughter had been killed, made a sound of disgust. He spoke rapidly in Apache, his words sharp as flint arrows. Sarah didn't need to understand the language to know he was arguing for blood. His pain was a living thing, radiating from him in waves. Naiche responded in their language, his tone carrying the weight of leadership. The exchange grew heated. Another warrior, gray-haired and weathered, added his voice to the debate. Sarah held Emma tighter, feeling the child's heart beating against her chest like a trapped bird. "Mama, why are they angry?" Emma whispered. "Shh, baby. Just hold still." But Emma, with the startling directness of childhood, looked at Standing Dove and said, "You're sad. I can see it. Did someone hurt you?" Standing Dove's face contorted. For a moment, Sarah thought he might loose the arrow he still held half-drawn. But then Emma did something that stopped everyone cold. She started to sing. It was a simple lullaby, one Sarah sang to her every night. Emma's voice was thin and sweet in the desert air. "Hush now, my darling. The day is done. Stars are awakening, one by one. Angels are watching from heaven above, wrapped in their wings of eternal love." Standing Dove's bow arm began to tremble. The arrow point, which had been aimed at Sarah's heart, slowly lowered toward the ground. His eyes, filled with rage, just moments before, now glistened with something else entirely. "My daughter," he said in broken English, his voice barely above a whisper. She sang, always singing, like birds in the morning. Sarah felt her own tears falling freely now. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for your loss. You did not kill her," Standing Dove said, the words seemingly pulled from him against his will. "No," Sarah agreed, "but my people did, and that's a burden I'll carry forever." Naiche watched this exchange with those sharp, intelligent eyes. He said something in Apache that made the other warriors step back slightly. Then he addressed Sarah directly. "You speak of burdens. Tell me, white woman, what do you know of burden?" Sarah set Emma down gently but kept her hand on the child's shoulder. "I know what it's like to lose someone you love more than life itself. I know what it's like to wake up every morning and face a world that seems empty and cruel. I know what it's like to wonder if the pain will ever ease, if you'll ever be able to breathe again without feeling like your chest is full of broken glass." She paused, gathering her courage for what she needed to say next. "My husband didn't die of sickness, not really. He was shot by Apache warriors 6 months before the cholera finished what the bullet started. Shot while trying to protect our neighbor's family during a raid." The warriors exchanged glances. This was unexpected. Sarah continued, "I could have hated your people for that. Part of me did, for a while. But hatred is like drinking poison, and expecting someone else to die. It would have destroyed me, and then what would have become of Emma? So I chose to let it go, to see that we're all just people trying to survive in a hard land, trying to protect what we love." "Yet you stayed," Naiche observed. "After your man died, you stayed on Apache land." "This is my home," Sarah said simply. "Emma's home. It's all we have. And if we burn it, kill you both, what becomes of your home then?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Then you create 2 more ghosts to haunt this land. 2 more reasons for the cycle of vengeance to continue. My death won't bring back your children. Emma's death won't ease Standing Dove's pain. It will only add to the mountain of grief that's already crushing us all." The elderly warrior spoke up in accented English. "The woman speaks wisdom, Naiche. The blood of innocence does not wash away the blood of innocence. It only makes the ground more bitter. White Elk speaks truth," another warrior added, surprising everyone. This one was young, perhaps 25, with a scar across his cheek. "My grandfather told me of the time before the white men came in such numbers. He said we were not always at war. There was trade, even friendship sometimes. Those days are dead. Standing Doves killed by white greed and white bullets." Yes, Sarah agreed, surprising him. Those days are dead. But what about tomorrow? What about the day after? Do we keep killing each other's children until there's no one left to mourn them? Emma, who had been quietly listening, suddenly tugged on Sarah's skirt. Mama, can I show them something? Emma, this isn't. But the little girl had already darted into the house. Sarah's heart lurched, but before she could follow, Emma was back, carrying something wrapped in cloth. This was Papa's, she announced, unwrapping the object to reveal a battered Bible. But look what I keep inside. She opened the book, and several pressed flowers fell out, along with a small collection of feathers and colorful stones. But what she pulled out deliberately was a piece of paper with a child's drawing on it. I made this after Papa went to heaven, she said, holding it up for the warriors to see. It was a crude but earnest drawing of figures holding hands, some brown, some white, all standing under a bright yellow sun and blue sky. Mama said Papa would want us to be friends with everyone, even the people who hurt him, she said. Holding on to mad feelings is like holding on to a hot coal. It only burns you. She looked up at Naiche with those innocent blue eyes. Were you friends with your little girl? Did she draw pictures too? The question was so unexpected, so gently asked, that Naiche actually took a step back. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, more human. Yes, he said. She drew pictures. Animals, mostly. She loved to watch the deer in the early morning. I like deer too, Emma exclaimed. Sometimes they come to drink from our water trough. Mama says we have to share the water because the desert doesn't have enough for everyone to be greedy. White Elk chuckled, a surprising sound given the circumstances. The child is wiser than many chiefs I have known. Standing Dove had been silent during this exchange, but now he spoke, his voice thick with emotion. My daughter, she would have liked this one. They could have been friends, in a different world. Maybe they are friends now. Emma said seriously. In heaven, Papa says there's no fighting in heaven, just singing and happiness and all the candy you can eat. Despite everything, several of the warriors smiled at this. Even Naiche's stern expression softened slightly. Sarah sensed a shift in the moment, fragile as a soap bubble, but real. Would you like some water? You've been riding in the heat. We have a well, and the water is cool. The warriors looked to Naiche. Accepting hospitality from an enemy was no small thing. It created obligations, complicated the simple arithmetic of vengeance. After a long moment, Naiche nodded. Water would be welcome. Sarah nearly sagged with relief. Emma, go get the good cups. The ones we use for company. As Emma scampered off, Naiche fixed Sarah with that penetrating gaze. You do not fear us anymore. It wasn't a question, but Sarah answered anyway. I'm terrified, but fear makes people do stupid things. And right now, stupidity could get us all killed. You are unusual for a white woman. You're unusual for an Apache warrior. You haven't killed us yet. The day is young, Naiche said, but there was something in his tone, not quite humor, but a lessening of the killing tension that had hung over them all. Emma returned with a tray of cups and a pitcher of water, walking as carefully as if she were carrying gold. She served each warrior with the solemnity of a child playing house, making sure everyone had a cup before pouring the water. Standing Dove was the last to receive his cup. Emma looked up at him and said, I'm sorry about your little girl. When my papa died, I cried for days and days. It's okay if you want to cry too. Mama says tears are how the heart washes itself clean. The fierce warrior's hand trembled as he took the cup. A single tear tracked down his painted face, leaving a clean line through the war paint. What was her name? Emma asked gently. Your daughter, Morning Star, he whispered. Her name was Morning Star. That's beautiful, Emma said. Like the first star you see when the night is ending. Papa taught me about the morning star. He said it means hope is coming. Standing Dove made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. He drained his cup of water and handed it back to Emma with shaking hands. Then he said something to Naiche in Apache, his voice urgent and pleading. Naiche listened, nodded slowly, then looked at Sarah. Standing Dove he says the child has his daughter's spirit, not literally. He added quickly, seeing Sarah's alarm. But the same light, the same, what is your word? Innocence. He says killing innocence is what started this sorrow. Perhaps preserving innocence can end it. What are you saying? Sarah asked, hardly daring to hope. White Elk stepped forward. There has been enough blood. The white soldiers who killed our children were wrong. But if we kill these two, we become like them, murderers of the innocent. The soldiers will not stop, another warrior argued. They will see our mercy as weakness. Or, Naiche said, thoughtfully, they might see it as strength. The strength to break the cycle. He was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with something profound. When he spoke again, it was directly to Sarah. You offered your life for your child's. This is a mother's courage, the same courage our women show. But I think there is another way. A harder way, perhaps, but better. Tell me, Sarah said. You will leave this place, take your daughter and go far from here, back to the east, where you came from. This land is soaked in too much blood, filled with too many ghosts. Your staying here ensures only more death, for you or for us. Sarah's heart sank. Leave the home James built with his own hands. Leave his grave. But looking at Emma, seeing the trust in her daughter's eyes, she knew she would agree to anything that kept her safe. And if I refuse, she asked, needing to know all her options, then we leave now, and others will come. Maybe Apache, maybe white soldiers seeking revenge for Apache raids, maybe bandits or outlaws. You cannot hold this place alone, and you know this. He was right. Sarah had known it for months, but had been too stubborn, too attached to admit it. There's more, Naiche continued. You will carry a message for us. To your Fort Buchanan, to your soldiers and settlers, you will tell them what happened here today. That Apache warriors had you at their mercy and chose to spare you. That we are not the savages your newspapers make us out to be. That we want peace, but peace with honor, not the peace of graves. They might not believe me, Sarah said. Then we are no worse off than before. But if even one person listens, if even one person thinks differently about us, he shrugged. Seeds take time to grow. Standing Dove spoke again in Apache, gesturing emphatically. Naiche translated. He says you should tell them about Morning Star. About a 6-year-old girl who loved to sing and draw pictures, who was not a savage or a threat, just a child, like your Emma. I will, Sarah promised. I'll tell everyone who will listen. Emma, who had been following the conversation with the partial understanding children have of adult matters, suddenly spoke up. Can I give Standing Dove something? Without waiting for permission, she ran back into the house. This time, she returned with a small wooden cross that James had carved. This was my papa's, she said, offering it to Standing Dove. Mama says it means love is stronger than death. Maybe it can watch over Morning Star in heaven. When you look at it, you can remember that not all white people are bad. Just like when I look at this horse, I'll remember that not all Apache people are scary. Standing Dove took the cross with infinite care, as if it were made of spun glass. He said something in Apache that sounded like a blessing, then carefully tucked the cross into his pouch. We will go now, Naiche announced. You have 3 days to gather what you can carry. On the 4th day, if you are still here, we will not come again, but others might. He turned to leave, then paused. Your husband, where is he buried? Sarah pointed to the small fenced area beside the barn. There, under the cottonwood he planted our first year here. Naiche nodded to his warriors. They walked to the grave, and each man placed something on it, a feather, a bead, a small stone. It was a sign of respect, Sarah realized, for a warrior who had died protecting his family. As they prepared to mount their horses, Naiche back one last time. What you said about hatred being poison. This is true, but sometimes, white woman, the poison has been drunk for so long that the body doesn't know how to live without it. Be patient with those who cannot let go as easily as you have. And you? Sarah asked. Have you let go? I am trying, he said simply. Your child helps. Standing Dove's tears help. Perhaps that is all any of us can do. Try to be better than our worst impulses. Try to see the humanity in our enemies. He mounted his horse with the fluid grace of someone born to ride. The other warriors followed suit. Standing Dove last of all. As he rode past, he stopped beside Emma. Morning Star, he said in his accented English. I will tell her spirit about you. About the brave little white girl who sings and shares water and gives away her father's treasures to ease an enemy's pain. Emma smiled up at him. Tell her I'll be her friend, even if we can only meet in dreams. Standing Dove nodded, unable to speak, and rode on. Sarah stood in the dusty yard long after the Apache warriors had disappeared over the ridge, their figures dissolving into the shimmering heat like a half-remembered dream. Emma's small hand found hers, warm and trusting. Mama, are we really leaving? The question Sarah had been dreading. She knelt down, brushing a strand of golden hair from Emma's face. Yes, sweet pea. We are. But what about Papa's grave? What about the chickens? What about... We'll take the chickens with us. And Papa, Sarah's voice caught. Papa is in heaven, remember? Not just in that piece of ground. He's wherever we are. Emma considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. Can we take some of the dirt from his grave to keep him close? The request nearly broke Sarah's heart. Of course we can, baby. That's a beautiful idea. They spent the rest of that day in a strange sort of suspended animation. Sarah went through the motions of evening chores, feeding the animals, drawing water, preparing a simple supper, but her mind was already leaving, already calculating what could fit in their wagon, what would have to be left behind. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, clutching the wooden horse Naiche had given her, Sarah sat by candlelight and began to write. She had promised to carry a message, and she meant to do it properly. To whom it may concern, my name is Sarah McKenzie. By the time you read this, I will have left my homestead in the Dragoon Mountains, not by force, but by choice, a choice given to me by Apache warriors, who could have easily taken my life and that of my daughter. On this day, the 15th of September, 1871, 5 Apache warriors came to my home. They had every reason to kill us. 3 days prior, soldiers and civilians had attacked their camp, killing innocent women and children. Among the dead was Morning Star, the 6-year-old daughter of a warrior named Standing Dove. These men came for vengeance. They found instead a widow and her child, and in that finding, they chose mercy. Sarah wrote late into the night, telling the story exactly as it had happened. She wrote about Emma offering back the wooden horse, about Standing Dove's tears, about the water shared and the cross given. She made several copies, knowing that one letter could easily be dismissed or destroyed. The next morning brought unexpected visitors, but not Apache. Tom and Martha Harrison, their nearest neighbors from 5 miles east, arrived in their buckboard with their teenage son, Joel. Sarah, Martha called out, her round face creased with worry. We heard there was an Apache sign in the area. Are you all right? Sarah helped them down from the wagon, grateful for familiar faces. We're fine. But Martha, Tom, I need to tell you something. Can you come inside? Over coffee, the last pot she'd make in this kitchen, Sarah realized she told them everything. Tom's weathered face went through a series of expressions from disbelief to alarm to something like wonder. They just let you go, he asked. After you offered your life, they did more than that, Sarah said. They gave me a chance to start over, to take Emma somewhere safer, and they asked me to tell people what happened. Martha reached across the table to squeeze Sarah's hand. "Oh, honey, James would be so proud of how you handled this. But leave, where will you go?" "Back east, I think. I have a cousin in Missouri who wrote last year about a teaching position in her town. Maybe it's still available." Joel, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "Mrs. McKenzie, what you did, standing up to them like that, it was brave, but what they did, choosing not to fight, that was brave too, wasn't it?" Sarah smiled at the young man's perception. "Yes, Joel, I think it was maybe the bravest thing of all. It's easy to kill when you're angry. It's much harder to choose not to." Tom cleared his throat. "We'll help you pack. Take whatever you need to town. Our wagon's bigger. We can make 2 trips if needed. And you'll stay with us tonight," Martha added firmly. "No arguments. You're not spending another night alone out here." As the women began sorting through the household goods, deciding what was essential and what could be left, Tom pulled Sarah aside. "That letter you're writing, the one about what happened, you planning to send it to the newspaper?" "Among others, the fort commander, the territorial governor, maybe even newspapers back east. People need to know that the Apache aren't just the bloodthirsty savages they read about." Tom rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "Might not make you popular. Lots of folks have lost family to Apache raids. They won't want to hear about Apache mercy. I know, but I made a promise. And more than that, Tom, we can't keep living like this. The killing, the revenge, the constant fear. Someone has to be the first to say enough. Maybe that's what happened yesterday, a first step toward enough." That afternoon, while sorting through James's things, Sarah found his journal. She hadn't been able to read it since his death, but now, preparing to leave, she felt strong enough. She opened it to one of the last entries. May 3rd, 1871. "Sarah thinks I don't see her fear, but I do. She's terrified of this place, of the Apache, of raising Emma alone if something happens to me. Maybe we should leave. Maybe I'm a fool for trying to build something here. But I look at this land, harsh as it is, and I see potential, not just for crops or cattle, but for something more. Maybe someday, Apache and white folks can share this territory. Maybe Emma will grow up in a world where that's possible. Probably just a dreamer's notion, but a man needs dreams, even impossible ones." Sarah traced his handwriting with one finger, tears dropping onto the page. "It wasn't impossible, James," she whispered. "You were right. It just cost more than either of us imagined." "Mama?" Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching her doll. "Are you sad?" "A Lee baby, but also grateful. Come here." Emma climbed into her lap, and Sarah showed her the journal. This was Papa's. He wrote down his thoughts and dreams. "Would you like to keep it?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Will you read it to me sometimes?" "Every night if you want." As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of rose and gold, Sarah walked to James's grave one last time. The Apache token still lay there, feathers lifting slightly in the evening breeze, beads catching the last light. She knelt and carefully filled a small cloth bag with earth from around the wooden marker. "I'm taking her away from here, James," she said softly. "Somewhere safe, where she can go to school and have friends, and not wake up wondering if today's the day violence finds us. I know you wanted to make this work, to build something lasting here, but sometimes, the bravest thing is knowing when to let go." A sound made her look up. On the ridge where the Apache had disappeared that morning, a lone figure sat on horseback, silhouetted against the sunset. Even at this distance, she recognized Naiche's bearing. He raised one hand in farewell, in blessing, in acknowledgement that she was keeping her part of the bargain. She would never know, but she raised her own hand in response, and the figure turned and vanished over the ridge. That night at the Harrisons' home, crowded around their dinner table, Sarah watched Emma playing with the Harrisons' younger children. The little girl was showing them the wooden horse, telling the story of the Apache visit with a child's dramatic flair. And then the sad warrior was crying, just like I cried when Papa went to heaven. and I gave him Papa's cross to help him feel better, and he said he would tell his little girl in heaven about me." The Harrison children listened wide-eyed, and Sarah noticed their parents exchanging meaningful looks over the children's heads. Later, as Martha tucked Emma into bed in their spare room, she heard her friend singing the same lullaby Emma had sung to the warriors. Tom found Sarah on the porch, staring out at the star-filled desert sky. "Martha's got Emma settled," he said, handing her a cup of coffee. "That's quite a girl you're raising. She saved our lives," Sarah said simply. Her innocence, her kindness, that's what changed everything. The warriors looked at her and saw their own children. It's hard to kill when you see yourself in your enemy's eyes, still planning to leave tomorrow, day after. "I need to go back once more, get the last of our things." The Harrisons had offered to help, and several other neighbors had gotten word and promised to come as well. Tom was quiet for a moment. "You know what happened to you. It's going to change things. Maybe not right away, maybe not obviously, but stories like this, they work on people's minds, make them think differently, or make them angry that I'm defending the Apache. That too. But Sarah, I've been out here 15 years. I've fought Apache, buried friends they've killed, but I've also traded with them in peaceful times, learned a bit of their language. They're people, just like us, capable of great cruelty, sure, but also great kindness. What you're doing, telling this story, it needs doing." The next day was a whirlwind of activity. Word had spread, and neighbors arrived to help. Some came out of curiosity, wanting to hear the story firsthand. Others came with donations, a bit of money for the journey, preserved food, warmer clothes for Emma, since they'd be traveling as winter approached. Elizabeth Mueller, the stern German woman who ran the general store in town, surprised everyone by arriving with a substantial purse of money. "It is from collection," she said in her thick accent. "People hear your story, some think you are fool, but others remember Apache who traded fairly, who helped during the flood 2 years past. We are not all blind with hate." Even more surprising was the arrival of Lieutenant Carson from Fort Buchanan. The young officer, barely older than Joel Harrison, had ridden out with 2 soldiers. "Miss McKenzie," he said, removing his hat, "we heard about your encounter. I'm here on behalf of Colonel Morrison. He'd like to speak with you before you leave." Sarah tensed. "Am I in some kind of trouble, Lieutenant?" "No, ma'am. The opposite, actually. The Colonel, well, he's interested in your story. Very interested. He asked me to give you this." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter of safe passage, signed by the Colonel, and a bank draft for more money than Sarah had seen in years. "The Colonel says to consider it a widow's pension," Lieutenant Carson explained. "Your husband did die defending settlers, after all, and, off the record, ma'am, the Colonel's tired of this war. If your story can help move us toward peace, he wants to support that." Sarah was speechless. She'd expected official indifference at best, condemnation at worst. Not this. Lieutenant Carson shifted uncomfortably. "There's one more thing. Standing Dove, the warrior you mentioned. We have records on him. His daughter, Morning Star, she was known to us. She and her mother would sometimes come to the fort to trade. She was a sweet child, used to sing for the soldiers. When we heard she'd been killed in that raid, he trailed off. But Sarah understood. Even among the soldiers, there was regret for innocent lives lost. Tell the Colonel I'll write to him from Missouri. Tell him that peace is possible, but it has to start with recognizing each other's humanity." As the lieutenant rode away, Sarah turned to find Emma sitting on the porch steps, carefully wrapping the wooden horse in cloth. "So it won't get hurt on the trip," Emma explained. "I want to keep it forever, so I can tell my children about Morning Star and Standing Dove, and the day we all decided to be friends instead of enemies." That evening, their last in Arizona territory, Sarah stood with Emma outside their empty house. The furniture was gone, either sold or given away. Their possessions were packed in the Harrisons' wagon. Tomorrow they would begin the long journey to a new life. Are you scared, Mama? Emma asked. Sarah considered the question. A little. Change is always scary. But you know what? I'm more hopeful than scared. Why? Because we're carrying something important with us. Not just our things, but a story. A true story about people choosing kindness over cruelty, choosing life over death. And stories like that, they can change the world. One person at a time. Emma looked up at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Look, Mama, the morning star. Sarah followed her daughter's pointing finger. There it was, Venus, the evening star that would become the morning star, the eternal dancer between night and day. Morning star is watching, Emma said with the certainty of childhood. She's happy we're going to tell people about her. The wagon wheels creaked a lonely rhythm as they rolled away from the only home Emma had ever known. Sarah held the reins with steady hands, though her heart felt like it might shatter with each turn of the wheels. Beside her, Emma clutched the small bag of earth from James's grave, the wooden horse and her father's journal, their most precious cargo. The Harrisons rode alongside them for the first 10 miles, Tom on horseback, Martha and the children in their wagons. It was both comfort and protection. Apache weren't the only danger on these roads. Bandits, deserters, and desperate men made travel risky for a lone woman and child. The stage station at Sulphur Springs, Tom said, riding close. That's where we'll part ways. You can catch the stage to Tucson from there, then the railroad east. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. The landscape rolled past saguaro cacti standing like sentinels, red rocks painted gold by the morning sun, the mountains James had loved rising blue and mysterious in the distance. Every vista was a goodbye. Mama, look! Emma pointed to a dust cloud approaching from the south. Sarah's hand instinctively went to the rifle beside her, but Tom raised his hand. Riders, but they're moving too slow to be hostile. Probably travelers like us. As the group approached, Sarah's breath caught. 3 Apache riders, but not warriors. An elderly woman rode in front, with 2 younger women behind her. Their horses were laden with bundles. They too were traveling, not raiding. The 2 groups approached each other warily. Tom's hand rested on his pistol, but he didn't draw. The elderly Apache woman raised her hand in a gesture of peace. We mean no harm, she said in accented but clear English. We go to the reservation at San Carlos. No choice left. Sarah's heart ached at the resignation in the woman's voice. We mean no harm either. We're leaving too. Going east. The old woman's eyes studied Sarah intently, then fell on Emma. Something flickered in her expression. You are the woman. The one who gave water to Naiche's warriors. Sarah started. How did... Stories fly faster than eagles in the desert. Standing Dove told his wife. His wife told her sister. Her sister told me. The old woman urged her horse closer. I am Lozan, Anton Morningstar, who now walks the spirit path. Emma sat up straighter. Your morning star's aunt, I have something of hers. She held up the wrapped wooden horse, then carefully unwrapped it to show Lozan. The old woman's composure cracked. She spoke rapidly in Apache to the younger women, who gasped and began talking excitedly among themselves. This was her favorite. Lozan said, her voice thick. She carved it the day before the soldiers came. How do you have this? Naiche gave it to me, Emma said simply, to remember her by. Do you want to hold it? With trembling hands, Lozan took the small horse. She held it to her chest and began to sing, a low, mournful melody that needed no translation. It was a song of loss, of love, of memory. When she finished, she handed the horse back to Emma. You keep. Naiche was right to give it to you. Morning Star would like that a little white girl treasures her toy. One of the younger women spoke, in Apache, pointing at Sarah. Lozan listened, then translated. My daughter wants to know why you didn't fight, why you offered your life for your child instead of using your gun. Sarah considered her answer carefully, because I knew fighting would mean we'd both die. But offering myself, there was a chance Emma might live. Any mother would do the same. Not any, Lawson said. Some would fight and doom their children with them. You chose wisdom. She reached into her bundle and pulled out a small beaded pouch. For your journey. Medicine for protection. Sarah accepted the pouch with both hands, understanding the significance of the gift. Thank you. I wish things were different. I wish you didn't have to leave your lands. Wishes are for children, Lawson said, but not unkindly. We live in the world that is, not the world we wish for. But perhaps, she looked at Emma, perhaps these little ones will make a better world. She spoke to Emma directly then. You remember Morning Star, child? Remember her name. Tell others she was real. She was loved. She mattered. I will, Emma promised solemnly. Forever and ever. The two groups parted ways, each heading toward their different exile. Sarah watched the Apache women disappear into the desert haze and wondered if their paths would ever cross again. At Sulphur Springs Station, the parting with the Harrisons was tearful. Martha hugged Sarah and Emma repeatedly, pressing a basket of food and a warm quilt into their hands. You write us, she demanded. Let us know you arrived safely. And Sarah, Tom said quietly, pulling her aside. What you're doing carrying this story, it's important. Don't let anyone tell you different. Don't let them silence you. The stagecoach to Tucson was cramped and dusty, carrying a diverse collection of humanity, a whiskey drummer with his samples, a Methodist minister and his wife heading to California, two miners going to Tucson for supplies, and a well-dressed woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Pemberton traveling to visit her son in Santa Fe. Emma, with her natural friendliness, soon had the entire coach engaged in conversation. When the drummer complained about the Apache problem, she piped up, "They're not a problem, they're people. My friend Morning Star was Apache, and she liked to draw pictures just like me." The coach went silent. The minister's wife pulled her skirts closer, as if Apache influence might be contagious. "Child," the minister said sternly, "the Apache are heathens, murderers. You shouldn't speak of them as friends." Sarah felt her temper rise, but before she could speak, Emma responded with devastating innocence. Jesus said to love our enemies, didn't he? So even if they were our enemies, which they're not, we should love them anyway. That's what you preach, isn't it? The minister's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. His wife tittered nervously. The drummer laughed outright. "The child's got you there, Reverend." Mrs. Pemberton, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "I should like to hear this story about Morning Star and your Apache friends." So Emma told it in her clear, sweet voice as the stagecoach rolled through the desert. She told about the warriors arriving, about her mother's courage, about the wooden horse and standing dove's tears. She told it simply, without drama, which somehow made it more powerful. When she finished, the coach was silent, except for the creaking of wheels and the driver's occasional calls to the horses. Finally, Mrs. Pemberton spoke. "My husband was killed by Apaches 3 years ago. I've hated them ever since. But hearing this, a 6-year-old child murdered, a father weeping, she dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Perhaps hatred isn't the answer. Perhaps hatred isn't the answer. Perhaps it never was." The minister's wife unexpectedly spoke up. "There's a passage in Isaiah. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat." Perhaps that's what we witnessed here. A moment of God's peace in the midst of man's war. Even the miners, rough men who'd certainly fought Indians, seemed thoughtful. One of them said quietly, "I knew Standing Dove, traded with him once or twice. Never knew he had a daughter." Everyone has a daughter or a son or a mother or a father. Sarah said, "That's what we forget when we're killing each other. We forget the other side has people they love too." The rest of the journey to Tucson passed in thoughtful conversation. The minister, initially resistant, began asking genuine questions about Apache culture and beliefs. Mrs. Pemberton shared her own story of loss and her struggle with forgiveness. Even the drummer, motivated more by profit than principle, mused about the possibility of trade with peaceful Apache. In Tucson, while waiting for the train east, Sarah was approached by a man who introduced himself as Samuel Morrison, editor of the Tucson Citizen newspaper. "Mrs. McKenzie, I've heard about your encounter. Would you be willing to share your story for publication?" Sarah hesitated. Once in print, there would be no taking it back. But she remembered her promise to Naiche. "Yes," she said, "but you must print it exactly as I tell it. No embellishments, no editorial comments about Apache savagery. The truth, plain and simple." Morrison agreed, and Sarah spent 2 hours telling him everything. He wrote furiously, asking clarifying questions, especially about Standing Dove and Morning Star. "This will cause controversy," he warned. "There are many who won't want to hear Apache portrayed sympathetically." "Then they need to hear it most of all," Sarah replied. The train journey east was a revelation for Emma, who had never traveled beyond the Arizona desert. She pressed her nose to the window, watching the landscape change from desert to plains to the first forest she'd ever seen. In one particularly memorable moment, the train stopped for water in a small New Mexico town. A group of Apache prisoners was being transported under guard to the reservation, visible through the window. Among them was a young girl about Emma's age. Without hesitation, Emma grabbed her bag and pulled out the precious wooden horse. Before Sarah could stop her, she had climbed down from the train and was approaching the prisoners. The guards raised their rifles, but Emma's obvious innocence made them hesitate. She walked straight to the Apache girl and held out the horse. "This is for you," she said. "A friend gave it to me, but I think you need it more." Her name was Morning Star, and she was brave and kind. The Apache girl looked stunned, then slowly took the horse. She said something in Apache that sounded like a question. An older Apache woman translated, "She asks why you give this to her." "Because Morning Star would want her to have it," Emma said simply. "Because we're supposed to be friends, not enemies." The guards, the townspeople watching, even the other passengers who had come to see what was happening, stood in stunned silence. Then the Apache girl did something remarkable. She pulled a small doll made of corn husks from her own meager belongings and gave it to Emma. "Trade," she said in English. "Friends trade." The guard captain, a grizzled veteran with scars that spoke of many battles, cleared his throat roughly. "That's enough. Little miss. Back on the train now." But as Emma walked back, she heard him say to his men, "No chains for the children, give them extra water. This heat's too much for the little ones." Sarah saw him help the elderly Apache board the prison wagon more gently than before, saw him speak quietly to the Apache girl's mother with something approaching courtesy. Small changes, tiny mercy, but perhaps that's how the world changed, one small mercy at a time. 3 weeks into their journey, they reached St. Joseph, Missouri. Sarah's cousin Margaret met them at the station, a plump, cheerful woman who immediately enveloped them both in perfume-scented hugs. "Oh, Sarah and little Emma, how you've grown. Come, come, I have a buggy waiting. You must be exhausted." Margaret's home was a modest but comfortable 2-story house on a tree-lined street. After the harsh beauty of the desert, it seemed impossibly green and lush. "The teaching position is still available," Margaret said over tea that first evening. "The school board is eager to meet you, and there's a small house for rent just down the street. Oh, Sarah, I'm so glad you've come. But you must tell me everything. Your letters were so cryptic." So Sarah told the story again and watched her cousin's expression shift from shock to amazement to thoughtful consideration. "You'll have to be careful how you tell this story here," Margaret warned. "Missouri has its own complicated history with Indians, but the way Emma tells it, through a child's eyes, perhaps that's the key. Children see the truth that adults complicate." That night, tucking Emma into a real bed in a real bedroom for the first time in days, Sarah watched her daughter carefully place the corn husk doll next to her old cloth doll on the pillow. Mama, Emma said sleepily, do you think Standing Dove thinks about us sometimes? I'm sure he does, sweetheart. I hope he's not sad anymore. I hope he remembers that I gave him Papa's cross and knows we're thinking about Morning Star. I'm sure he knows. Emma was quiet for a moment. The Apache girl on the train, she looked sad. But when I gave her the horse, she smiled. Just a little, but she smiled. You did a good thing, Emma. Morning Star's horse will comfort another little girl now. That's what toys are for, Emma said with drowsy wisdom, to make children happy. Apache children, white children. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Sarah stood by the window looking out at this strange new town that would become their home. Somewhere far to the west, the desert was cooling under stars. Somewhere Naiche and Standing Dove and the others were facing their own uncertain futures. Somewhere Larsen and her daughters were learning the boundaries of their new prison called a reservation. The schoolhouse in St. Joseph was a far cry from the one-room adobe building Sarah had imagined teaching in someday back in Arizona. This was a proper two-story brick building with separate classrooms for different grades, real glass windows, and a bell tower that rang out over the town each morning. Sarah stood before her class of 3rd and 4th graders, 22 children who stared at her with curious eyes. It was her first day, and Margaret had warned her that news of her Apache encounter had already spread through town gossip. Good morning, class. I'm Mrs. McKenzie, your new teacher. A boy in the back raised his hand immediately. Mrs. McKenzie, is it true you lived with Indians? I lived near Apache people, yes. But my pa says all Indians are savages. Another boy interrupted. He says they should all be killed. Sarah felt the familiar weight of the promise she'd made to Naiche. This was why she was here. Not just to teach reading and arithmetic, but to plant seeds of a different understanding. What's your name? She asked the boy. Thomas, ma'am. Thomas Garrett. Well, Thomas, let me ask you something. Do you have a sister? Yes, ma'am. Lucy. She's 6, and do you love her? Of course. Apache fathers and mothers love their children too, just like your parents love you and Lucy. Thomas frowned, clearly struggling with this concept. But they're different. Yes, they're different. They speak a different language, have different customs, different beliefs. But in the ways that matter most, loving their families, wanting their children to be safe and happy, they're just like us. A girl near the front, with serious brown eyes, raised her hand. Miss McKenzie, did you really meet Apache children? Sarah smiled gently. I learned about an Apache girl named Morning Star. She was 6 years old, just like Thomas's sister Lucy. She liked to draw pictures and sing songs. She carved little wooden animals. What happened to her? The girl asked. Sarah took a breath. This was the hard part, the important part. She died, killed by white soldiers who attacked her village. The classroom went silent. These children had heard stories of Indian attacks, but rarely the other side. That's sad, the girl finally said. Yes, Rebecca, it is sad. Very sad. And her father's grief was just as real as any father's would be. Over the following weeks, Sarah wove these stories naturally into her lessons. When they studied geography, she taught them about Apache territory. When they practiced writing, she had them write letters to imaginary Apache children. When they studied history, she made sure they understood that history had more than one side. Not all parents were pleased. 3 weeks into the term, Mr. Garrett stormed into her classroom after school, his face red with anger. What are you teaching, my boy? He demanded. He came home saying Apache are people too, that they have feelings. I won't have him taught such nonsense. Sarah remained calm, though her heart was racing. Miss Garrett, I'm teaching him the truth. Apache are people. That's not opinion, it's fact. They're murdering heathens. Some have killed, yes, as have some white men. But Mr. Garrett, what if I told you about a 6-year-old Apache girl who was murdered by white soldiers? Was she a murdering heathen? That's different. How? How is it different? She was a child, just like your Lucy. Mr. Garrett's face grew even redder. "I'll go to the school board about this. You'll be dismissed." That evening, Sarah sat with Margaret, preparing for what seemed like the inevitable loss of her position. "I can't lie to them, Margaret. I can't teach them that all Apache are evil when I know it's not true." Margaret sipped her tea thoughtfully. "You know, there's someone you should meet, Judge Coleman. He's on the school board, but more importantly, he spent years as a federal mediator with various tribes before coming here. He might understand." Judge Coleman turned out to be a surprise, a tall, dignified black man with silver hair and kind eyes. He welcomed Sarah into his study, which was filled with native artifacts and books. "Mrs. McKenzie, I've heard about your teaching methods and about your experience in Arizona. I suppose you're here to tell me to stop," he smiled. "On the contrary, I'm here to support you, see. I've spent time with many tribes, including the Apache. I know they're not the monsters people make them out to be." He stood and walked to a photograph on his wall. It showed him with a group of Native Americans, all formally posed. This was taken during treaty negotiations 5 years ago. "The man on my right is an Apache chief. We spent weeks together. He taught me about their laws, their philosophy, their deep connection to the land. I taught him about our legal system, our history. We became, dare I say, friends." "What happened to him?" "Killed 2 years later by soldiers who didn't bother to check if his band was hostile or not." Judge Coleman's voice carried deep sadness. "His son now lives on the reservation. I send what help I can, but—" He shrugged helplessly. "So you understand why I have to teach the truth." "I do, and I'll defend you to the school board. But Mrs. McKenzie, you must be clever about this. Don't confront prejudice head-on. It only makes people defensive. Instead, tell stories, make the Apache human through narratives, not lectures." Taking his advice, Sarah adjusted her approach. She began telling stories during lunch, informal tales that the children would then repeat at home. Stories of Apache children playing games similar to their own. Stories of Apache mothers singing lullabies. Stories of Apache fathers teaching their sons to be brave and their daughters to be kind. Emma, now attending 2nd grade in the same school, became an unwitting ambassador. Her matter-of-fact friendship with Morning Star's memory and her possession of the corn-husk doll from the Apache girl on the train made her a celebrity among the younger children. One day, Sarah overheard Emma in the schoolyard, surrounded by other children. "Apache girls play with dolls just like us," Emma was saying, "and they have tea parties, except with pine needle tea instead of real tea. And they tell stories about brave warriors and clever rabbits, and why the stars are in the sky." "How do you know?" challenged an older boy. "Because Standing Dove's daughter told him, and he told my mama, and she told me, and because the girl on the train smiled when I gave her the horse, just like you'd smile if someone gave you a present." The boy had no answer to that simple logic, but it wasn't all smooth progress. One November evening, Sarah returned home to find her front window broken, a rock lying on her parlor floor with a note attached: "Indian lover, go back to the desert." Margaret was horrified, but Sarah was strangely calm. "This means it's working," she said, sweeping up the glass. "People only get this angry when their beliefs are being challenged. Sarah, this could escalate. You could be in danger. I've faced down Apache warriors, Margaret. Anonymous rock throwers don't frighten me." But the next day brought unexpected support. Several parents arrived at her classroom after school, not to complain but to thank her. Mrs. Anderson, the banker's wife, spoke first. "Mrs. McKenzie, my William came home yesterday and said something remarkable. He said that just because someone is our enemy doesn't mean we can't understand them. That understanding doesn't mean agreeing. That's a level of moral reasoning I didn't expect from a 9-year-old. Miss Hoffman, the German baker, added in his accented English, "My family fled Prussia because of war, always war." When my Hans tells me you teach that Apache children are just children, I think, yes, this is right. In war, we forget the children. Even more surprising was the arrival of Reverend Patterson from the Methodist Church. Mrs. McKenzie, I'll admit I was skeptical when I heard about your unusual teachings, but my daughter Rebecca has been transformed. She started a prayer group for Apache children on the reservations. She says if Jesus loves all children, then we should pray for all children. I can't argue with that theology. These small victories gave Sarah hope. But the real test came in December, when she received an unexpected letter. It was from Standing Dove, written in broken English by a missionary at the San Carlos reservation. Mrs. Sarah, who gave water, I write this through the mission man who knows English words. I want you know that I carry the cross of your husband. I want you know that when I see it, I remember not all whites are enemy. I remember your small girl who sang to stop my anger. Life here is hard. They make us farm, but this land is not good for farming. Children sick often, many die, but I tell them about your Emma. I tell them about white mother who offered life for child. Some listen, some begin to believe maybe peace possible. My wife births new daughter. We name her Hope in our language. But secret name I whisper only to her is Emma Morning Star. Two children who should be enemy but instead are friends. That this is prayer I make, that she grows in world where Apache and white can be friends. I ask the mission man to find if you are alive. He says you teach school now. This is good. Teach them we are people. Teach them we love our children. Maybe if enough learn this, the dying stops. Standing Dove. Sarah read the letter aloud to Emma that night, both of them crying by the end. He named his baby after us? Emma whispered in wonder. After you and Morning Star together. A bridge between two worlds. Can we write back? Can we send them something? Yes, sweetheart. We'll send letters and maybe some supplies. Blankets for winter, medicine if we can manage it. This began a correspondence that would continue for years. Sarah organized her students to write letters to the Apache children at San Carlos. It started small, her class only, but word spread. Soon other teachers were interested. Judge Coleman used his connections to ensure the letters were delivered. The children wrote simple things. Dear Apache friend, my name is William. I am 9 years old. I like to fish and play marbles. What do you like to play? Your friend William. And amazingly replies came back. Dear William, I am called Small Eagle. I have 10 winters. I like to run races and throw rabbit sticks. What is marbles? Maybe you teach me. I teach you rabbit sticks. Small Eagle. These exchanges created something remarkable. Real connections between children who were supposed to be enemies. The students began to see Apache children not as abstract others, but as potential friends with names and interests and favorite games. Miss Garrett withdrew Thomas from Sarah's class in protest, but he was increasingly isolated. The majority of parents saw the value in what Sarah was teaching, not just about Apache but about empathy, critical thinking, and moral courage. One snowy evening in January, Sarah was grading papers when Emma came to her with a question that had clearly been brewing. Mama, do you think we'll ever see Naiche and Standing Dove again? Sarah set down her pen. I don't know, sweetheart. Probably not. They're on the reservation now, far from here. But their spirits are here, aren't they? In the stories we tell, in the letters we write. Yes, Emma. In that way, they're always with us. Emma was quiet for a moment. I dream about Morning Star sometimes. Not sad dreams, happy ones. We play together. She teaches me Apache games, and I teach her hopscotch. Is that silly? No, baby. That's beautiful. That's your heart's way of keeping her memory alive. Do you think somewhere the real Morning Star and Papa are friends in heaven, watching us and smiling? Sarah pulled Emma close. I think that's exactly what they're doing. That February brought a special visitor to the school. Charles Winters, a journalist from Harper's Weekly, had heard about Sarah's story and traveled from New York to interview her. Miss McKenzie, your story has created quite a stir back east. The idea that Apache warriors showed mercy, that a white woman defended them, it challenges everything people think they know about the Indian Wars. Good, Sarah said simply. It should challenge the story we tell ourselves about the West, about the Apache, about this conflict. It's too simple. Reality is more complex. Tell me about Standing Dove's tears, Winters said, his pen poised. So Sarah told him, and watched this sophisticated Eastern journalist's eyes grow misty. And the child, your Emma, she really gave him her father's cross. She did, and he really carries it still, according to his letters. Winters spent 3 days in St. Joseph, interviewing Sarah, Emma, Judge Coleman, and various townspeople. He attended Sarah's class, watching her teach both academic subjects and harder lessons about humanity. Before he left, he said something that stayed with Sarah. Mrs. McKenzie, historians will argue about battles and treaties and politics, but what you're doing here, teaching children to see the humanity in their supposed enemies, this might be what actually changes the future. The Harper's Weekly article appeared in March 1872, with an illustration on the cover that took Sarah's breath away. The artist had depicted the moment she had described, Emma handing Standing Dove the cross while Apache warriors looked on. But it was the title that made her hands tremble. The Child Who Stopped a Massacre, a true story of grace in the American frontier. Margaret read the article aloud over breakfast while Emma listened with wide eyes. In the blood-soaked territory of Arizona, where vengeance begets vengeance in an endless cycle, a 6-year-old girl named Emma McKenzie accomplished what armies and treaties could not. She made warriors weep and choose mercy over justified revenge. They wrote about me, Emma whispered. Amazed, Sarah nodded, though she felt uneasy. The article, while sympathetic, had a mythic quality that worried her. She had told Winters the simple truth, but in print, it read like a fairy tale. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Letters poured in from across the country. Some praised Sarah's courage and Emma's innocence. Others condemned them as Indian sympathizers and traitors to their race. But most expressed a kind of bewildered hope. Could such a story really be true? Could peace really be possible? One letter stood out from the rest, bearing the official seal of the Office of Indian Affairs in Washington. Dear Mrs. McKenzie, I have read with great interest the account of your encounter with Apache warriors in Harper's Weekly. As someone struggling to reform our nation's Indian policy, I find your story both inspiring and instructive. I would like to invite you to Washington to testify before a congressional committee, considering new approaches to what is termed the Indian problem. Your first-hand experience of Apache humanity could be invaluable in shaping more compassionate policies. I understand you have teaching obligations, but I urge you to consider this opportunity. Your voice and your daughter's story could save lives. Sincerely, Vincent Collier, Special Indian Commissioner. Sarah stared at the letter, feeling the weight of possibility and responsibility. Washington, Congress. The chance to influence policy at the highest levels. You have to go, Margaret said immediately when Sarah showed her the letter. But my students, I can substitute for a few weeks. Sarah, this is what you've been working toward. The chance to make real change, not just in one classroom but across the nation. That evening, Sarah wrote 2 letters, one to Commissioner Collier, accepting his invitation, and another to Standing Dove, telling she would carry his story to the leaders in Washington. The train journey east with Emma was different this time. They were no longer anonymous refugees, but minor celebrities. At every station, people who had read the article approached them. Some wanted to shake Sarah's hand, others wanted to see Emma, the miracle child who had tamed Apache warrior. It made Sarah deeply uncomfortable, but Emma handled it with remarkable grace. They weren't tamed, she would correct people gently. They were already good. They just were sad and angry about their children dying. When they saw I was just a child too, they remembered that being kind is better than being mean. In Chicago, where they had to change trains, a reporter from the Tribune was waiting. Mrs. McKenzie, critics say your story is impossible. That Apache would never show such mercy. Sarah was tired, frustrated by the constant questioning of her truth. But before she could respond, an unexpected voice came from behind them. I can verify her story. They turned to see a cavalry officer in uniform, his weathered face marked by years of frontier service. Captain Michael O'Brien, 7th Cavalry. He introduced himself. I was part of the detail that found the McKenzie homestead 2 days after Mrs. McKenzie left. We found evidence of Apache presence, tracks, signs of their gathering. But no violence. That alone was extraordinary. But more than that, he paused, seeming to gather himself. We also found Apache tribute markers at her husband's grave. Feathers, beads, items of respect. Apache don't honor white men's graves, ma'am, he said to the reporter. Unless something extraordinary happened. Mrs. McKenzie's story explains what we found. The reporter scribbled furiously. Captain, do you believe peace with the Apache is possible? O'Brien was quiet for a moment. I've fought Apache for 12 years, seen good men on both sides die. But if a widow and her little girl could find grace with warriors bent on revenge, maybe we're all going about this wrong. Maybe force isn't the answer. In Washington, Sarah and Emma were overwhelmed by the grandeur of the Capitol. Commissioner Collier met them personally at the station, a kind-faced man with intelligent eyes and the bearing of someone carrying immense burdens. Mrs. McKenzie, Miss Emma, he greeted them warmly. I cannot express how grateful I am that you've come. Your story has already begun to shift opinions here, though we have a hard fight ahead. He had arranged lodgings for them at a modest but comfortable boarding house near the Capitol. That evening, over dinner, he explained the political situation. The committee is divided. Half want to pursue what they call a peace policy, education, Christianity, assimilation. The other half want military solutions, forced removal or worse. Your testimony could tip the balance. What exactly do you want me to say? The truth, Mrs. McKenzie. Just tell them what happened. But more importantly, help them see Apache as human beings. That's what's been missing from all our debates. Humanity. The next morning, Sarah dressed carefully in her best black dress, pinned her hair severely back, and tried to calm her nerves. Emma wore her Sunday dress, the one with tiny blue flowers that brought out her eyes. Do I have to talk to the important men? Emma asked nervously. Only if you want to, sweetheart. But if you do speak, just tell the truth, like you always do. The committee room was imposing, dark wood panels, portraits of stern-faced men, and a long table where 9 congressmen sat like judges. The gallery was packed with spectators, journalists and other officials. Commissioner Collier introduced her, and Sarah was sworn in. Her voice shook at first as she began her story, but as she continued, she found her strength. She told them everything: James's death, her isolation, the Apache arrival, her offer, Emma's innocence breaking through their rage, Standing Dove's tears, Naiche's wisdom. When she finished, the room was silent. Then the questions began. Mrs. Cobblers, McKenzie, said Congressman Morrison from Texas, his tone skeptical. You expect us to believe that Apache warriors known for their brutality simply chose to spare you because your child sang a song? No, Congressman. I expect you to believe they spared us because they recognized our shared humanity. My daughter reminded them that children are innocent, whether Apache or white. Standing Dove had just lost his own 6-year-old daughter. When he saw Emma, he saw Morning Star. Apache are incapable of such sentiment, Morrison insisted. They're savages. With respect, sir, have you ever met an Apache parent grieving for their child? Of course not. Then how can you claim to know what they're capable of feeling? Another Congressman, Hartley from Massachusetts, leaned forward. Mrs. McKenzie, even if your story is true, it's one incident. How does this change the larger situation? It proves that peace is possible when we see each other as human. The Apache who came to my home had every reason to kill us. Their children had just been murdered by whites. But they chose differently. If they can choose mercy in their grief, Can't we choose wisdom in our strength? What would you have us do? Asked Congressman Davis from Ohio. Simply trust that all Apache will be as merciful as these were. No, sir. I'd have you stop creating situations where mercy is needed. Stop the unprovoked attacks on peaceful bands. Stop breaking treaties. Stop treating them as less than human. Treat them as you would want to be treated if a foreign force had invaded your homeland. There was murmuring in the gallery at this bold statement. Congressman Morrison's face reddened. You dare suggest we are invaders? This is American territory. It was Apache territory first, Sarah said quietly. That's simply historical fact. The tension in the room ratcheted up, but then a small voice spoke from beside Sarah. May I say something? Emma had stood up, barely tall enough to be seen over the witness table. Commissioner Collier quickly provided a box for her to stand on. Proceed, child, said the committee chairman, apparently amused. Emma looked at the row of stern faces and spoke with the clarity that only children possess. You're all arguing about Apache like they're not real people. But Morning Star was real. She was 6, like me. She liked to draw pictures and sing songs. Standing Dove is real. He's a daddy who misses his little girl. When he cried, his tears were just like the tears my mama cried when Papa died. She pulled out the corn-husk doll the Apache girl on the train had given her. An Apache girl gave me this when I gave her Morning Star's horse. We didn't speak the same words, but we both understood friend. If children can be friends, why can't grown-up? Congressman Hartley cleared his throat, visibly moved. Young lady, what would you have us do? Emma thought for a moment. Stop killing each other's children. That would be a good start. The simplicity of it silenced the room. Even Morrison seemed at a loss for words. Then Emma added, Standing Dove named his new baby after me and Morning Star together. Emma Morning Star. That means he wants Apache and white people to be friends. If he can want that after his daughter died, why can't you want that when you're all safe here in your big fancy room? Several spectators in the gallery began to applaud, quickly hushed by the chairman's gavel. Order. We will have order. But his eyes, Sarah noticed, were suspiciously bright. The committee questioned them for another hour, but the moment had shifted. Emma's innocent wisdom had accomplished what Sarah's reasoned arguments couldn't. It had made these powerful men feel rather just think. After the hearing, Commissioner Collier was jubilant. That was remarkable. Your daughter, she has a gift. But outside the Capitol, not everyone was pleased. A group of protesters had gathered, holding signs reading, Remember the Alamo and No Peace with Savages. One man spat at Sarah's feet. Indian lover. Traitor to your race. Emma pressed closer to her mother, frightened by the hatred in their faces. But then another voice rang out. Make way there. Captain O'Brien appeared with several other officers, forming a protective barrier around Sarah and Emma. Anyone who threatens these ladies will answer to me, he said loudly. This woman has more courage in her little finger than you lot have in your entire bodies. As they escaped to their carriage, O'Brien walked alongside. There are more of us than you might think, Mrs. McKenzie. Soldiers who've seen enough killing, who want to find another way. Your story gives us hope that way exists. That evening, back at the boarding house, Sarah found Emma crying in their room. What's wrong, sweetheart? Those people hate us, Mama. They hate us for being friends with Apache. And Apache probably hate us for being white. Where do we belong? Sarah gathered her daughter close. We belong in the space between, Emma. In the bridge between two worlds. It's not an easy place to be, but it's an important place. That's where peace gets built, in the space between. Is it worth it? All the mean people and the scary moments? Sarah thought of Standing Dove's letter, of his daughter named Emma Morning Star. She thought of the children in her classroom writing letters to Apache children they'd never met. She thought of Captain O'Brien and other soldiers, beginning to question the endless violence. Yes, baby, it's worth it. Every bridge starts with someone brave enough to step into the space between. That's what we're doing. A knock at the door interrupted them. The boarding house owner brought up a telegraph that had just arrived. Sarah read it, and her hands began to tremble. Monsieur McKenzie, stop. Standing Dove arrested. Stop accused of hostile actions. Stop facing military tribunal. Stop, he asks for you. Stop. Please come. Stop Agent Matthews, San Carlos. She looked at Emma, whose eyes had gone wide with alarm. Mama, we have to help him. Sarah's mind raced. San Carlos was in Arizona territory. It would mean returning to the place they'd fled, facing unknown dangers. But Standing Dove had shown them mercy when he had every reason not to. How could they do less? Yes, she said, already reaching for paper to write to Commissioner Collier. We do. The train carrying Sarah and Emma back to Arizona territory felt like a journey backward through time. The green fields of Missouri gave way to prairie, then desert, each aisle stripping away the safety and comfort they'd found in St. Joseph. Commissioner Collier had arranged for their travel and provided official documents that should, theoretically, grant them access to San Carlos Reservation. Should and would were very different things in Arizona territory. Captain O'Brien, who had volunteered to accompany them, studied the landscape with watchful eyes. The situation has deteriorated since you left, Mrs. McKenzie. General Crook has arrived to pursue what he calls aggressive negotiation. More Apache have been forced onto reservation. Those who resist are hunted. And Standing Dove, from what I've gathered, he was accused of leaving the reservation without permission and meeting with hostile bands. The penalty could be imprisonment or worse. Emma clutched her corn-husk doll tightly. But he was probably just trying to help people, like when he helped us. O'Brien's expression softened as he looked at the child. Probably so, little miss. But helping the wrong people, even for right reasons, can be seen as a crime in these times. They stopped in Tucson to change to a military escort for the final leg to San Carlos. The town had grown harder, meaner in the year since Sarah had passed through. More soldiers, more guns, more fear in everyone's eye. At the military depot they were met by Lieutenant Carson, the same young officer who had delivered Colonel Morrison's letter of safe passage the year before. He looked older now, worn down by whatever he'd witnessed in the intervening months. Miss McKenzie, I'm glad to see you well, though I wish it were under better circumstances. He glanced around nervously. Your return has stirred up strong feelings. Some see you as a hero, others as a traitor. Be careful. What can you tell me about Standing Dove? He's being held at the agency jail at San Carlos. The trial is in 3 days. General Crook himself will oversee it. He wants to make an example. Carson lowered his voice. Standing Dove won't defend himself. He's refused to speak except to ask for you. The journey to San Carlos was a grim progression through a transformed landscape. Where Sarah remembered open desert, there were now military checkpoints. Where Apache had once moved freely, following ancient paths, there were now fences and forbidden zones. The San Carlos reservation itself was a shock. Sarah had expected hardship, but the reality was worse. Hundreds of Apache crowded into an area of poor land, far from their traditional territories. The heat was oppressive, the water scarce, the government rations inadequate. This is what we've done, O'Brien said quietly, disgust evident in his voice. Taken people from mountains and streams and forced them into this hellhole. Agent Matthews, a thin, nervous man who seemed overwhelmed by his position, met them at the agency building. Miss McKenzie, I should warn you, your presence here is highly irregular. General Crook was not pleased when he heard you were coming. I don't care about General Crook's pleasure. I care about justice for Standing Dove. Justice? Matthews laughed bitterly. There's precious little of that here, just survival and regulation. He led them to the jail, a squat adobe building that radiated heat and misery. Inside, behind iron bars that seemed obscenely out of place in this land of vast skies, sat Standing Dove. He was thinner than Sarah remembered. His proud warrior's bearing diminished but not broken. When he saw them, his eyes, those eyes that had once burned with rage and then wept with grief, lit up with something like hope. Sarah, Who gave water, he said in his careful English. You came, my warriors speak of her still, the little golden hair who sang away our rage. Some say she has medicine spirit. She's just a child who sees clearly. Perhaps that is the strongest medicine. As the evening progressed, Sarah noticed Standing Dove, sitting alone, holding his daughter but staring into the distance with sad eyes. She approached him. What troubles you? Morning Star would be 11 now, same as your Emma. I wonder what she would think of all this. Sarah sat beside him. She would be proud. Her death wasn't in vain. It led to this, to understanding, to friendship, to hope. I dream of her still. She asks me why she had to die. What do you tell her? That sometimes great good comes from great sorrow, that her death broke my heart, but breaking made space for grace to enter. He looked at his living daughter, Emma Morning Star. This one will live in better world, because Morning Star's death started change. Emma Morning Star, as if sensing the weight of the conversation, climbed into her father's lap and kissed his cheek. No sad, Papa. Happy day. The culmination of the evening came when old White Elk asked for silence. Despite his frailty, he commanded attention. I have vision to shed. Vision, given by spirits in Sweat Lodge. I see future, not tomorrow, not next year, but generations ahead. I see children who do not know the word enemy, between Apache and White. I see the two peoples woven together, like basket, each strand making the whole stronger. He pointed to both Emmas. It starts with children like these, children named for friendship, children who refuse to inherit hate. Then he did something unprecedented. He removed a necklace from around his neck, a sacred item that had been in his family for generations, and placed it around young Emma McKenzie's neck. You are adopted into Apache people, he said formally. You are bridge builder, peace bringer. This is your role given by spirits, accepted by people. Emma, understanding the magnitude of this honor, bowed deeply. Then she removed a locket her father had given her, the last gift before his death, and placed it around Emma Morning Star's neck. And you are my sister, she said to the little girl, forever and always. The crowd was silent, many weeping openly at this exchange. As the evening ended and groups began to disperse, Sarah found herself standing with Standing Dove, watching their daughters play together, the older Emma teaching the younger a song. They are the future, Standing Dove said. Yes. Do you think we've changed things, really changed them? Sarah thought about the letters still being exchanged between children, the Apache teachers now working in white schools, the white doctors now serving on reservations, the slow but real shifts in policy coming from Washington. We've planted seeds, she said, seeds of understanding, of empathy, of possibility. Not all will grow. Some will be crushed by those who prefer hate, but some will take root, grow strong, spread their own seeds. Is it enough? Sarah watched Emma lift Emma Morning Star onto her shoulders, both girls laughing as they spun in circles. It has to be. Each generation makes it a little better, a little more possible. Maybe our grandchildren will live in the world White Elk envisioned. Standing Dove nodded slowly. Then Morning Star's death had meaning. Your husband's death had meaning. All the sorrow had purpose. As families began heading home, Emma approached her mother, Emma Morning Star's hand in hers. Mama, Standing Dove says they have to leave tomorrow, but Emma Morning Star will come back next year, and maybe I can visit San Carlos in the spring. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. Emma looked up at her mother with those clear blue eyes that had once stopped warriors in their tracks. Mama, do you remember that day when they came to our house? Every detail. Were you scared? Terrified? But you were brave anyway. Brave is what you do when you're scared, Emma. Just like you were brave when you sang to them. Emma was quiet for a moment, then said, I wasn't trying to be brave. I just thought if I sang, maybe they'd remember that children everywhere like lullabies, that we're all just people who need comfort sometimes. Sarah pulled her daughter close, tears flowing freely now. And that, my darling, is why your song changed everything. Standing Dove approached with his family to say goodbye. He and Sarah clasped hands, no words needed between them anymore. They had traveled from potential killer and victim to something beyond friendship. They were family forged in the crucible of choice, of choosing mercy over vengeance, understanding over ignorance. As the Apache delegation prepared to leave, Naiche made one final statement to the gathered crowd. 5 years ago, I could have killed a woman and child. It would have been easy, expected even. But the child sang, and in her song, I heard my own daughter's voice. I heard all children's voices. I remembered that we are more than our anger, more than our grief. He looked directly at Emma. You asked us for water that day, little singer. You gave us something more precious. You gave us back our humanity when we were in danger of losing it. For this you will always be sacred to Apache people. The next morning, as the Apache delegation departed, the whole town turned out to see them off. Children lined the streets, waving and calling out goodbyes to their new friends. Some exchanged small gifts, drawings, carved toys, pressed flowers. Sarah stood with Emma, watching Standing Dove help his daughter into the wagon. Little Emma, Morning Star, was clutching a rag doll that one of the white children had given her, just as the older Emma had once clutched a wooden horse. The circle continues, Sarah murmured. As the wagons rolled away, Standing Dove looked back one last time. He raised his hand to his heart, then pointed to Sarah and Emma, an Apache gesture of deep respect and eternal connection. Emma waved until they were out of sight, then turned to her mother. It's not really goodbye, is it? Not when hearts are connected. No, sweetheart. Never really goodbye. That night, Sarah sat at her desk to write in her journal, as she had every night since James died. But tonight was different. Tonight, she wrote, September 15, 1877. Today I saw the impossible. I saw Apache and white families eating together, children playing together, old enemies shaking hands. I saw my daughter honored by Apache elders and an Apache child treasured by our town. 5 years ago, I thought I would die. I thought Emma would die. Instead, we lived to see the beginning of a new world, one where understanding slowly replaces hatred, where children lead us toward the light. James, my beloved, your dreams were not foolish. Peace is possible. It just comes in ways we never expected, through a child's song, a wooden horse, a corn-husk doll, an offered cup of water, through small acts of grace that ripple outward, touching hearts, changing minds. Tomorrow, Emma begins teaching a new group of children the Apache words Standing Dove taught her. Next month, 3 more Apache children will come to study at our school. Next year, Emma will spend a summer at San Carlos, learning traditional Apache ways to bring back and share. The bridge grows stronger with each passing day, not without setbacks, not without those who would tear it down, but it grows nonetheless, built by children who refuse to inherit our hatred. Morning Star did not die in vain. None of them did. Their sacrifice has become the foundation of something beautiful, a future where Apache and white can call each other friend, sister, brother. I close this entry with the words White Elk spoke tonight. From great sorrow comes great grace. If hearts are open to receive it, our hearts are open, the grace flows freely. And somewhere, I believe James and Morning Star watch over us all, smiling at what their sacrifices wrought, not an ending but a beginning. The beginning of understanding, the beginning of peace, the beginning of love conquering hate, forever and always. As Sarah set down her pen, Emma appeared in the doorway in her nightgown. Mama, I had a dream about Morning Star again. Was it a good dream? The best? She said to tell you thank you for remembering her, for making sure she matters. Sarah opened her arms and Emma rushed into them, both of them crying now, not from sorrow but from the overwhelming grace of it all. Outside, the stars shone bright over Missouri, over Arizona, over all the vast country where hearts were slowly learning to see enemies as friends, where children were leading the way toward a future their parents could barely imagine. And in that moment, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that every terrible thing had led to this moment of perfect grace, where love had conquered hate, where mercy had triumphed over vengeance, where a little girl's song had changed the world, one heart at a time. The Apache had spared them that day, but in truth they had saved each other. And in saving each other, they had begun to save everyone.